All right, we're back for another Friday financial wrap up with Mr. Michael Zuber. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing well, man. What a wild week. I've been doing this 30 years, and I believe last week or the week we're wrapping up was the most chaotic, the most chaos, most uncertainty, most dramatic moves that I've ever seen. And I've been through a lot. The .com, COVID, the GFC, 90s recessions. Last week and probably the weeks to come are going to be complete economic chaos. And chaos doesn't mean bad, right? It doesn't have to mean bad. It just means disruption. It means keep your head on a swivel, understand the plan, look for opportunities. But yeah, I think for the next several weeks, economic chaos is the kind of phrase of the day. I think.
Well, I want to say you called it. You said back in January, hey, the next 6 months are going to be a wild ride. It's going to be chaotic. And then you said at the 90-day mark, it's like, hey, we're not through the woods. This is going to get really wild and weird. And you called for chaos. So you've been calling it for weeks and months. So this is for April the 11th. We are live, April the 11th, 2025. You were going to comment before I gave the date.
Yeah, no, I certainly did warn, suggest in January the next 6 months, and again, like you said, at the 90-day mark, I'm like, guys, we're halfway through it. Buckle up. But I'll have to admit, I did not see this level of chaos. This is probably three or four factor more wild. So I'd love to take credit for it, but as always, I'm like, dude, I didn't see this coming. This is wild. We're trying to reorder world trade uh, while the economy is humming. So you got to understand the goal, you got to understand the tools, you got to understand the players, and yeah, just buckle up, just buckle
Yeah.
up.
And I would agree. 30, you and I are both of the same age.
Yep.
30 plus years, are basically our adult lives. This is the weirdest, wildest thing we've ever seen. And also too, I just wonder how much of it is because we have such immediate access to the news cycle.
You
Is it
know,
magnified, or is it actually this is much bigger than anything we've seen because of the magnification of instant news in our pockets?
if I try to rewind the clock and pretend to be let's pretend to be an 18-year-old, right? So it's 1990, 89, something like that for you and
Yep.
I,
Yep.
right? Social media is not a thing, internet's not even a thing yet. I still think this would be disruptive, but you're right. The immediate access, the immediate reaction. Also, we shouldn't forget that there is a general belief that Trump is either evil or he's the second coming, right? He's a very polarizing figure,
Yep.
which drives, frankly, very interesting reactions. I mean, I'm a guy that tries to stay in the middle and call balls and strikes. And man, if you look at some of the comments over the last couple of days, I'm either a Trump lover or I have, Trump derangement syndrome. And I guess I'm doing something right when I piss off both sides. But man, you guys got to get your head on straight. He's not the second coming, and he's not some evil, Hitler figure. He's neither of those. He's something in the middle.
Yep.
He's also the president of the United States, who is trying to do something that he has been calling for 40 years, right? There is videos of him talking about the trade deficit in the 80s.
Yep.
Now, you can argue whether or not it's right or wrong, but you're not the president. He is. And
Right.
he has chosen a path, with these tariffs, now a 90-day pause. And, economic chaos, back to the opening. It is where we are. No one has to like it, but you are where you are. And, our job is to keep our head up and see where we can find opportunities in chaos. And there's always opportunity in chaos. So yeah, it does really annoy me. In one comment I get, accused of TDS, and then the next comment I get, called, a Trump lover. I'm like, God, you guys are freaking moronic to think
Yeah.
that he's either one or the other, because he's neither. And, freaking get in the middle somewhere.
Yeah. And then especially to judge you based on a little bit of commentary, like on a 10-minute video or whatever, or
Mhm.
just a little snapshot of,
Probably
yeah,
probably one comment is what
one
flipped him
liner.
off. Well, it's
Yeah.
freaking
One
crazy.
liner set somebody off. Okay. Well, we're
Yeah.
clearly people are agitated.
Yeah.
So people are agitated. Let's get into it. So let's talk about the 90-day pause. What's your take on the 90-day pause? What actually happened from your point of
Yeah.
view? The whole
Yeah.
idea that a lot of headlines, Trump blinked,
Yeah.
Trump
Sure.
folded like a cheap suit,
Yeah.
Trump,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, what is your take on what happened with the 90-day pause?
So again, I look at things like this typically in a bigger picture. And I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a what was called fake news post on Monday talking about a 90-day pause. And I think it was early Monday and the stock market ripped higher.
Yep.
Then it was called fake news and the market continued its decline. What I really think happened is if you were watching Tuesday after hours, it was like 9 o'clock Pacific, so midnight Eastern.
Yep.
The bond market broke or was breaking.
Yep.
The 30-year note hit 5%. The 10-year note hit 4.5%. And if you don't remember, Friday it hit 3.9. So to get a 60 basis move in essentially 3 trading days is nearly unheard of. It actually only happened one other time, and that was in 1982. So anytime you're comparing yourself to 1982 and Paul Volcker, you've got some rate movement for sure. So what I think happened is the administration always knew they had the 90-day pause in their holster. They didn't want to use it. They probably didn't want to use it. But then the bond market was breaking, and Scott Bessent, Jamie Dimon, others probably, sent smoke signals to President Trump. That's like, dude, you don't throw that 90-day pause out there. This thing's going to get wild, and there will be plenty of unintended consequences. So, again, I think President Trump issued the 90-day pause, but I think it was very important because the other thing he did is he upped the China tariff from, I think it was 125 to 145. So what he is clearly saying is we're going to negotiate, with the quote unquote good actors, but China's not off the hook.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, think about somebody importing stuff from China and it's now double. It's almost up 100. Like if it was $2, it's now $3.50. Right? So there's a lot of order cancellations. This hurts China because it's an export economy. China will certainly battle and fight this and try to export to other countries, no doubt. But as the largest consumer of Chinese goods, this is being felt. And there are clear lines being drawn between China and the U.S. Certainly hope for both our sakes that cooler heads prevail, because this could get wild, right? China could dump treasuries. China could do lots of things. Now, I think it's fair to say when you look at the grand picture, China, quote unquote, can't win. But I'm not sure you want to be the United States if China goes all out and tries to inflict pain, because we're going to be in a bad spot too. Yeah, you could technically call us the winner, but does the winner really look like a winner when they're bloodied and bruised and all of that?
Yeah.
We are the 2 largest economies on the planet. We clearly need fairer trade. We clearly need China to be a better actor, right? They joined, I think it was WTO or whatever it was, and frankly haven't followed suit. So the battle lines are there. But again, this is part of the chaos. There's very much been a tit for tat China-US, and that's not good. The ratcheting up of pressure. I mean, China could dump treasuries. We could delist Chinese stocks. I mean, it could get wild.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things there in that commentary, but I want to also just say about the Treasury specifically for our audience. A lot of you know this, some of you may not. Our 30-year mortgage rates, our whole housing market really depends on what's going on with those treasuries. And then if China were to just dump, foreign investors own about 28, 29, 30%, short of
Let's call it
30%.
30. Call it 30, but yeah, close.
30% of our entire treasury market. It's China, UK,
Japan.
Japan.
Yep.
Japan's the biggest. There are several foreign countries that hold our treasuries, our bonds. And if they were to just start dumping bonds, explain how that would, you mentioned it earlier in the daily news and it's not in our show notes, but I think
Mhm.
it's an important point because we're talking about bonds.
Yeah, so this is what, and you could think of bonds just like any other commodity or tool or anything for any other asset. So if you are a holder of said asset, in this case bonds, and you own a lot of them, and you suddenly decide either because you have to raise cash or you want to inflict pain, you could sell these things and frankly sell them at a loss. That's where this gets crazy. So what happens is all this new bonds, new assets, new widgets coming in the system, that drives down price. But in the bond world, what happens when price goes down is rates go up. And if you were not paying attention Tuesday evening, because most of us don't tune in after hours, it was wild to see the 10-year note, the 30-year note skyrocket. So I did some digging. I found a Bloomberg report. It talked about some Japanese firm that got caught on the wrong side, and they were into forced liquidation. But again, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying it's a bullet they have in their gun, and they could inflict pain. The other thing to point out, again, back to this, is they do have a limited supply, right? This is a gambit that they could run. They could probably run for 6 months if they wanted, but they can't run it forever, right? Because they don't have unlimited supply. They have a finite number. So very likely the Fed would counter any of that. They would just become the buyer, and we would play that game again. But again, I am fairly certain that this is just a fight we don't have to have, at least to that level, and it would inflict a lot of pain on both countries, on both citizens, and frankly, I don't want to see that.
Agreed. I'll keep going in the show notes. Let's talk about Trump's comments, and just what was your takeaway from some of his comments about everything?
So after Trump issued the 90-day pause, I think probably he's been interviewed a lot, but I think this one phrase was not appreciated for, frankly, the honesty that he intended it. And I wrote it down here so I wouldn't misquote it. There will be transition pain and transition cost. So he's warning us pretty clearly that, this is going to be bumpy. Earlier, he called it a detox. This is not going to be fun. This is not going to be fun. And, buckle up and keep your head on a swivel. Like I said earlier, the president is telling you that this transition is going to be painful, and there are going to be some costs.
Okay. Yep. Well, we've had our seatbelt on for a while now, so because we have you. Thank you, Michael. Let's talk about China. What's China like? What do you think?
Yeah.
What happens next? What was China's position? I mean, obviously they took a firm position on this, and
Yeah, they went tit for tat for a while, right? We hit them, they hit us, we hit them, they hit us. I think he's called Chairman Xi and President Trump need to get on the phone, need to meet, need to have some neutral ground, and they really need to start communicating, because 145% tariff is unattainable. It's just unattainable. Again, they could try to cover up some of the cost and print money and do all of those things, which they are undoubtedly trying to do. But you got to remember, China coming into this was in a very weak position. They are suffering a housing collapse. They have lost consumer confidence. They're actually having deflation, right? I don't know if you guys picked up on it. The latest reading on China's inflation reading is negative. Deflation is never a good thing. So China wants this to go away, I believe. I don't think they want to fight, but again, I have actually been to China plenty of times, and their first reaction when to get punched is to punch back. So I think it was pretty obvious what they were going to do, but it's time to negotiate, and I hope that's going on back channels. Any negotiation with China is going to be difficult, fraught with peril, trust issues, both ways, frankly. So that's the big one. I think tariffs with Israel, Vietnam, frankly, even the EU, even Canada and Mexico. I think all of those can get worked out within 90 days, if not 180 days, because trade agreements are complicated. But China's, though, is the wild card. We've got to pay attention to that. In fact, I think a lot of the market reaction yesterday and again this morning is because people are realizing just how significant that China tariff is.
Very interesting. Yeah, a lot going on, folks. A lot going on. Let's talk about Apple. Apple
Yeah,
is, yeah, that was a
yeah,
big headline this week.
yeah. And again, one of the things the reason I brought up Apple here is, again, you're going to see a lot of companies and frankly a lot of consumers do unusual things before tariff kicks in. So I just wanted to highlight Apple. So I don't know if you guys know this, but Apple basically leased or rented or whatever you do 6 cargo planes to move about 1.5 million iPhones from China and India to the United States before the tariffs went into effect. Just think about that, right? The tariffs are so significant that at the time, I think it was the second most valuable company on the planet, decided that the most efficient thing to do was to get 6 cargo planes, fill it with 1.5 million iPhones, fly them to the United States, unload them before the tariffs kick in. This is the kind of business decisions that it's called pull forward in demand. You're kind of pulling it forward. Consumers did this. A lot of people bought cars early. So I think we're going to get a very distorted Q1 GDP. It's likely going to be positive because of a lot of pull forward in demand. But this is tough. This is tough.
Very, very odd. I wonder, let me ask you just a follow-up question on Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Do companies like Apple and other countries that are dependent maybe really, really reevaluate and say, okay, do we potentially need to make some shifts in our manufacturing, in our, maybe move things to Mexico to more friendly, or Canada, or I don't know, South America, maybe marketplaces that are more friendly to the US?
Again, the chessboard is very fluid right now, but
Yeah.
I think that is the most likely outcome. And this already happened in Trump's first presidency. I don't know if you guys know this or remember this, but Apple already moved a lot of their manufacturing out of China to India, to Vietnam. So it is only, it's thoughtful to think that, yeah, you know what, even more manufacturing will leave China. And again, it will certainly leave China if these tariffs stick, right? There is an outcome where negotiations go bad and, that 145% doesn't drop. There's no promise that ever stops. If negotiations go wild and there is no agreement, you will see manufacturing flee to freer places like Mexico, like Canada. Because again, much of the world, again, based on Trump's 90-day pause, will just be at 10%. And if you're not up on it, 10% is a lot lower than 145.
I would agree. Definitely lower. Let's talk about earnings season. What do you see happening with earnings season?
I think Jamie Dimon said it best this morning. We got
Yeah.
our first evidence on Wednesday when Delta Airlines did this. You're going to see lots of people, frankly, withdraw guidance, which is never a good thing. You're going to likely see, 90% of earnings reports, if they do guide, will be guiding lower. I mean, you can't be a CEO of a public company and not lower guidance in this world, right? There's an old saying, because again, I used to be an accountant and a financial analyst for public companies. And the last thing a CEO wanted to do and a CFO was to lower guidance when no one else was doing it.
Yeah.
But when everyone was doing it, they're like, cool, what can we put in there? What can we bag? What can we, because what they're doing now is they're going to basically set up the rest of the year that it's easy to get over. So
Right.
expect earnings per share for the S&P 500 to come down, likely come down meaningfully. You're seeing capital investment change. You're seeing investor sentiment, consumer sentiment. It is nasty out there, I think.
We're in a full-on reset.
I think so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, It's a wild, and again, I just checked the bond market. We're going to talk about this later, but think about this. Typically, what happens when the stock market is crashing, and this is what happened last week, right? The stock market went bananas down, and then people had a flight to quality, or
Right.
safety, which is the 10-year. So the 10-year last week, I think, went from 4.25 to 3.91. But if you're not paying attention, the market is down and rates are up. That's not normal. Anytime you have that bifurcation of non-normal things, you've got to ask yourself,
Something's
what's
changing.
what's going on?
Yeah, there's a problem. There's a problem. Okay, let's keep going. Let's talk about just generally. I mean, probably the word of the year, uncertainty. What's your take
Yeah,
on uncertainty for 2025 and where we're
it's
at today?
it's really funny. I remember the last Fed meeting where Jerome Powell used uncertainty. I think somebody counted like 37 times or 39
Yeah.
times, and I kind of made fun of him.
Yep.
But now I'm like, I get it. I get it. I've been doing this a long time. I'm pulling data and information and decisions from all places, and they seem to be going cross currents. Decisions are being flip flopped in seconds, and kind of like we opened this economic chaos is growing, certainty is falling, and the only thing we could do is get through it. Right. Again, like we talked about the next 90 days, right? Getting us to July 20th. July 20th will be the 6-month mark. I'm hoping to have clarity by July 20th. So we just got to get there.
July 20th. Here we go. Let's talk about rates. Pretty
That's
wild.
the big, that's the shocker of the day. So first off, when you think about rates, you come like, dude, I talked to a lot of mortgage brokers, and on Friday, like for the weekend, they were all telling me almost to the person, all my clients are calling me back. Everybody wants to start a refi. Great news. We're going to, Michael, it's going to be a better year than you told me, right? Because I told all of them that 2025 is going to suck. It's going to be the last hard year. And they were giddy over the phone. I mean, their phones must have been blowing up. And then lo and behold, Monday, and then Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday was shocking. And again, it's shocking today. The 10-year note's over 4.5 today. I just checked while we were talking. That's not good. That's not good.
No.
So
3.9. It was 3.99 a week ago.
Yeah, it's
3.9 something a week ago, right?
It's 4.56 now. So again, 10-year, and again, the other funny, what really funny? Last week, I think on this show, I gave up on my 7% interest rate call.
Right. I was a part of that.
That might have been a week too early.
No, last week you and I were talking about our friend Barry Habib,
right?
Saying, and shout out to Barry Habib, well wishes, we love you, get well, recover, we believe in you. Yep. Barry, we were singing Barry's praises that hey, he knew something. We're going to 5.8, 5.9 by summer is what I was texting you and communicating with you. Like we're going to 5.9, 5.8, and lo and behold, I think you were.
I was
you're,
like,
you're 7%. Your 7% average for the year is looking much stronger now.
It's looking much stronger this week than last week. That's for sure.
So very interesting. What a wild ride. Have you ever seen the 10-year and 30-year mortgages move the way that they have this? I don't ever remember them moving like this.
So I've studied this. So the 30-year note, which is the one that really broke on Tuesday, it has only ever moved 56 basis points in 36 hours one time, and that was 1982. And again,
that makes sense.
That 1982, Paul Volcker ripping the Band-Aid off, taking us higher. That's not a year you want to be compared to. So it has happened once.
And it's interesting. You and I also are very reminiscent of the 80s, and Paul Volcker we mentioned quite a bit on this show. So let's keep going with the show notes. So if we talk about, let's talk about CPI, PPI. What happened this week?
It's really funny.
Isn't that interesting that CPI takes a back seat?
Dude,
like,
it's not even. Yeah, it doesn't matter. CPI doesn't matter for a couple of reasons, but let's just give it its time. CPI this month was the best reading since I think it was like June of 2021. So that's like 4 years ago. CPI headline I think is 2.4. Core was 2.8. First time below 3% in 4 years. Normally that those numbers come out and we start talking rate cut, we start talking, victory, but it just didn't matter. The data is stale. All of that data is pre-tariffs, pre-trade war, pre this, pre that, and it frankly just doesn't matter. PPI was equally good. PPI this morning was equally good, and it equally doesn't matter because it was all pre-trade war, pre-tariffs, pre-everything. So the inflation data, if this inflation data had come last month, the Fed could seriously be talking cuts. But given it happened now after the tariffs, it just doesn't mean a thing.
Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. Let's talk about the Fed. So what's going to happen next with the Fed?
Man, I've been reading lots of Fed statements and lots of Fed whatnots, and near as I can tell, the tariffs that were implemented were worse than they expected, which is never good, right? When you're Fed policymakers and something like that comes out worse than expected, it means all your numbers are wrong, right? Remember last month they gave us our dot plot and they had base assumptions, and their base assumptions were wrong, which means the dot plot is wrong. They're all of them to a person is talking about tariffs being at least incrementally inflationary, certainly changing expectations. Many of them are now also talking about tariffs potentially impacting the job market, right, with layoffs. They're all talking about business and investor uncertainty. So again, I think the Fed's on hold, right?
Yeah.
I think the next meeting in May, they're on hold. I thought they were on hold to begin with, but now I think it's a lock. They're on hold because they just don't know, right?
Yeah,
They
it's
just
too
don't
early
know.
to react, right? It's too early
Yeah.
to.
Too early, yeah.
So let's like this. We are at war.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
at
not
war.
a not a
This is
hot
war
not a
time.
hot war, but yeah, it's a war, I would say. Yeah.
I mean, this feels more impactful in terms of to what I see on the street, to households, people slowing down. The whole idea that the uncertainty and fear more so than like Desert Storm, or when there was something going on in the Middle East and we were deploying troops to Kuwait or other
Mhm.
parts of the world. This definitely, it feels like every household and every person I talk to is concerned, some worried. um let's talk about opportunity, but also let's talk about the certainty. How do people bring certainty back to their home? How do they bring certainty back to their families, back to their loved ones? Let's
Yeah.
talk about, like, yeah, what the opportunity, but also even starting with the certainty. How do we bring that back home for us individually?
Well, let's do certainty first, like you said. So the first thing I would ask most of you to do, and this is kind of strange talking as a guy that has YouTube and Instagram and all of that, who reads everything, is turn off the news.
Yep.
Right. What I would tell you to do in this environment, because again, as I open, the economic chaos is growing. I think a once a week check in is enough. I think there's a lot of doom scrolling, a lot of misinformation, a lot of fear, and it's just not good for you. It's just not good for you at this point. We will get through this. I think Jamie Dimon said it this morning. He doesn't give it. I'm going to use some colorful languages. So if you have kids in the room, you're going to hear a bad word in a minute. But basically, Jamie Dimon doesn't give a shit what happens the next 2 quarters. He said we've been through recessions before. We'll get through this one. But the challenge here is we don't know what's on the other side. That's unnerving. But again, the only way to go through hell, like the old country song, is to keep going. So the first thing I would tell someone in this moment is to unplug, right? Do a weekly, not an hourly check-in. The other thing you've got to realize is this is an uncertain world, so I certainly wouldn't be taking any wild flyers on things. I would, if you were thinking about buying a new car or going on this or that trip, in your car, and your car's still running, right? It's not like it's on the side of the road. You might want to delay some decisions. I think being conservative until July is not a bad thing. Well, we got to see where we are. It might be a great place. There's a chance we get through this. We get some tax policy changes and some deregulation, it could be, full game ahead. It could be, or it could just be a complete mess. So yeah, I think it's about not taking undue risks. If you are like the average American, which I don't think people that watch this channel are average by any stretch, but the average American can't, handle a $400 expense. I'd conserve. I'd find a way to conserve. It's, recessions are not fun.
Talk about opportunity. I mean, I know
Yeah.
all I'm looking for is opportunity. I think a lot of people are asleep at the wheel. I think a lot of people are paralyzed. I think when
Yeah.
people are fearful, it's time to be, in action and growing. Talk about opportunity, Michael.
Yeah, I've said 20. I was just at Deal Champs. I was at Ryan Pineda's event, and my whole theme for 2025 is the only people that win in 25 are investors. But let me be clear. I want investors to get greedy. I want them to get creative. I want them to create lifetime great deals. I have a saying that the deal of the decade comes around once a year, right? The deal of a decade comes around once a year. And in an environment with less competition, which is what we have, and by the way, competition's going down. I'm hearing left, right, and center. People are canceling contracts because they didn't rate lock, which, oh, by the way, rates are up again, right? I'm also seeing supply grow. And, somebody who's been through these environments before, motivated sellers are going to start waving their hands.
Yep.
So again, remember, when you do this business the right way, it doesn't always have to be about price. You can also get terms. And that's one of the things I love that you did for us in our school community is you did that whole creative financing bonus, which we put at level 2 for free. That, thousands of dollars of value there. So, just understand as an investor, it's time to skill up creative financing. Maybe use Velocity Mortgage's 90% CLTV, combined loan to value, get a first and a second from the seller. And, if you're an investor, keep your head down, look at your buy box, write disrespectful offers, write creative offers, write a cash offer, write a 90% CLTV offer, and try to get a deal of a decade. And I want to be very clear. I'm not talking a good deal. I'm not talking a great deal. I'm talking like a deal of the decade.
Yeah.
So think about that. And you only need to do one of those in 25, and 25 will be a successful year.
I love it, folks. That's it, folks. The deal of the decade, right? As an investor, you win. The key is to stay proactive, keep doing the work. This is a time to grow, to be aggressive, not to pull back. But again, only do amazing, great deals. School community. Everybody here should get involved with school community. I'm going to pitch for Michael. It's $20 a month. It is pennies. It's, what is it, 67 cents a day? Is that the number?
Correct.
67 cents a day. You can't buy anything for 67 cents, but you can get yourself into the school community. My thought would be this: get in the school community, take it for a test drive. Yeah. Spend $20. If you don't like it, if you're not getting what you need, by the way, you will get what you need. You'll stay in there. Get yourself into the school community. Michael, thank you for all that you do, man. Have a great weekend.
Yep. And just remember, folks, if you are a part of school, I will be going live Sunday at 8 a.m. It's my little way to give back. We can talk about the chaos that's going on, anything that you want. So,
and they get to ask you, it's a live Q&A. They get to actually be on and ask you and pepper questions and just dialogue and back and forth, right?
Yep. Bring it. Bring it. I'm there for you. I want to help people where I can. A lot of people are nervous and scared. If you want to ask me a question, join for $20 and you could cancel next month if you really wanted to. So I'll see you on Sunday.
Get on Sunday and be with Michael on Sunday and get that Q&A. Get your questions answered. Thank you, Michael. Have a great weekend, brother.
Take care. Bye.